Good afternoon and welcome to the May 1st, 2026 SANDAG Audit Committee meeting. We'd like to ask the interpreter to introduce himself and walk through the process of interpretation services for the meeting today.
Good afternoon. Announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon row and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish logo in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you're in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenas tardes. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States. From our four cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, the Gueño, the Luiseno, the Cupeño, and the Coahuila. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustices of the past. Now, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, before we jump into me, just want to confirm with Francesca that we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum.
Wonderful. I'd just like to announce that we are continuing to seek new public members to serve on the Audit Committee. The application is posted on the Audit Committee page of SANDAG's website. If you have any trouble locating the application, please reach out to the clerk. The Audit Committee provides a critical oversight function to SANDAG and the public. If you're interested and have at least 5 years of auditing, accounting, financial, or legal experience, or a combination, apply today. I'm going to move on to item 2.1. Are there any non-agenda public comments, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. We have two. We'll start with Andrea Ebbing and then the original draw. Andrea, you're self-muted at the moment. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, this is Andrea Ebbing, and I just want to comment on the importance of auditing our just as Rebecca Jones had brought up, because if we don't audit it, we don't understand what's going on, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we're issuing contracts to dope dealers and meth heads. So I had a really great conversation yesterday or over this week, multiple times with the chief of procurement for the San Diego County. Thank you, Sean. It was really amazing to speak with somebody that actually listened to me and cared about what's going on. We have two individuals who are friends with Summer Stephan, who tout their relationship with this mob boss that's destroying families, lives, human beings, the entire county, the city, and her own daughter. And so we have two situations where one of them's a dope dealer, one of them's a meth head. Somehow everything that's related to them was removed from Argis, and then we issued millions of dollars to them. And while the dope dealer is a child abducting pig who has multiple fentanyl fatalities tied to him and multiple partners who've been convicted by the DEA for opioid distribution, but that doesn't stop Summer Stefan from working directly with them and issuing them money. We also have another situation where we're now paying as a county for $150,000 for some clowns who are pretending to show people how to use Narcan. I think they're just trying to offload some money. When you have a CEO who's a meth head, we shouldn't issue $11 million contracts to them. But if Argis was audited and it wasn't being manipulated by pigs like Summer Stefan, then we would know what's going on with the people that we're working with as a county and in a city. The CEO of that company overdosed multiple times on the drugs she was supposed to be testing. The last I knew, we had a major narcotics unit, and we aren't supposed to be doing meth and heroin and not testing it to make sure it's safe before consumption. Get the clown out. Somebody replace her. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be the original draw, followed by Truth, and Truth will be our final speaker. You can go ahead.
Yes, you cannot be trusted as an audit committee, especially when you are engaging in contracts and bringing forward items like the item that went before the executive committee today regarding the ERP and the contract with Tyler Technologies. As I told you at the last meeting, you guys, it shouldn't be that easy for the public to find information on the people that you're contracting with that is extremely egregious, that has been happening for a very long period of time, that would and should lead you to not want to contract with this entity. However, it is like wants the monopoly on all of these program contracts. And the problem is that they've already had data breaches. Again, they have 18 federal lawsuits, and they've had previous lawsuits where they've had to pay out a lot of money, where they have, not met up to their contractual obligations. There has been data breaches or amounts of money that have been continuing to increase that come from the taxpayer because of their program not performing the way that it should and continual needing to have things be mitigated. And this looks like something that you're going to force SANDAG to potentially get into litigation with, and that comes from the people's pockets too. And it's just sad because it's like you guys are the ones that should be looking into these things and making sure this isn't happening. But it is, and it shows that you are not equipped to do that job and that you cannot be trusted with anything that you bring forward because you're not looking at things like BlackRock and Vanguard having their hands in this as well. So you guys need to course correct if you want to be trusted.
I think your final speaker will be Truth. You can go ahead.
Hi there, guys. It is Truth. Thank you for saying my name instead of my number. And you're going to understand the relevancy of that next week. And what I'm saying something without saying something. I'm just going to throw it out there that there's certain people, including Courtney, that are going to have a major investigation coming out. And it comes from an experience that I had at SANDAG today. I'm not going to get into it until the time is right. But I'm just giving a heads up for those of you who are smart that somebody is going to have a lawsuit against them. And so that's all I'm going to say today, but I am absolutely dead serious on that. So, hey, now that I've given a clue, that person can get prepared to go to court. So I do want to say that you on the audit committee, some of you haven't seen in a while, sorry I'm not over there. I probably could have gone, but I had, again, as you could tell, my mind on some other things. Jack, David, and Luz, so I didn't forget anybody good. Anal David Zito's been doing a great job pointing, getting the pinning questions, the pertinent point outs on the unfulfilled audit recommendations. And I'd really like to see that finally go somewhere past here. Because it seems like some in the back on the staff end still aren't getting it, and I frankly want them fired. I actually want whole departments gone if they're going to be part of the problem instead of part of the solution, because you still have a lot of conflicts of interest on other floors of the building that you're in. I'd also like an investigation into how many businesses fraudulently benefited from SANDAG's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise program. The ones who did not actually qualify, but SANDAG gave them the contracts anyway with zero audit verification. Because if the audit team isn't going to look into it, I'm eventually going to, and I'm going to name names. Because believe me, I am in the business of naming names when corrupt stuff happens, especially at a public meeting. Also, you need to look at what is making these empty bike lanes cost more than $1 million a mile. Well, is it the paint? Is it the paint? Thank you.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
Thank you. Do I have any non-agenda public or member comments? All right, we're going to now turn the time over to our Director of Internal Controls for an update. Ms. Shani, go ahead.
Thank you. So good afternoon. I'm Shanae Pickney-Forrest, Director of Internal Controls, filling in for Mario. For agency updates, earlier this week, Mario and a few of the board members traveled to Washington, D.C. to share SANDAG priorities with the San Diego Chamber. SANDAG views this as an opportunity to connect with our partners, and the timing was opportune as the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill is being drafted in Congress. So this bill brings in a lot of funding for our planning and capital programs, and as such, SANDAG has been advocating for that funding to continue. For project updates, as you know, we've been completing internal assessments of our departments. The toll operations assessment phase 2 has started. And this will help us to plan and prioritize tolling program opportunities, roles and responsibilities. We are also kicking off our HR assessment next week. That assessment will look at a few areas, including policies and procedures, recruitment and classification, workplace culture, training and development, and HR technology and systems. These internal assessments are important proactive opportunities for us to look at what's working, where we can be better, with the goal of providing our departments and leadership with insights needed to drive organizational success. Another update regarding our TCA agreement. Regarding our back office system, we have officially signed the agreement with TCA and had our kickoff meeting last week. We're working towards a back office system transition about a year from now. This is relevant to this committee because this means that we will be assessing some of our corrective actions regarding the back office system to see and make sure that the recommendation still makes sense, to assess relevancy, and or to assess whether these activities, if there are other activities and implementation places where we can meet the intent of the recommendation. The last announcement is office closures. SANDAG's main office and the customer service centers will be closed on Monday, May 25th for the Memorial Day holiday.
Great. Thank you for the update and for filling in. It's always good to have you with the audit committee. We're going to go to item 2.2 and get an update from the Office of the Independent Auditor. And today the update will be given to us by our Deputy Auditor, Michelle Ludwig. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Fisher and Vice Chair Molina, and good afternoon, members of the Audit Committee. I'm Michelle Ludwig, the Deputy Independent Performance Auditor. Our Independent Performance Auditor, Courtney Ruby, is unable to join us today as she's traveling to the conference, the National Conference for the Association of Local Government Auditors, or ALGA. Since the Audit Committee just met a couple weeks ago, I'll provide a brief report on OIPA's activities. So we're currently wrapping up the annual risk assessment and development of the audit work plan. IPA Ruby plans to present the results of the assessment and the plan at the June Audit Committee meeting. Our team is currently very busy with 3 audits underway. We have the audit of human resources, which is currently wrapping up the planning phase of the audit. And for the regional bike EAP audit, we're in the middle of fieldwork. And finally, we're wrapping up fieldwork and we'll be moving into the reporting phase of the audit for the agency's asset inventory. This weekend, several members of our team are headed to Cleveland, Ohio to attend the annual ALGA conference, where we will receive technical training, exchange ideas with peers, and build professional connections. This is the same organization that completed the peer review for OIPA last November. And finally, OIPA is open recruitment for 2 associate independent performance auditor positions this week. And that concludes my remarks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the update. Lots of exciting stuff going on, and hopefully those who travel can do so safely and enjoy their time at the conference. Do we have any public comments, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. If you're a member of the public who'd like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. We'll take, oh, that hand went down. So sorry, it keeps going back up and down. The person with the phone number ending in 8813, you can go ahead. I can see that you're unmuted, but unfortunately we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, Francesca. Thank you. I was going back and forth because I was wanting somebody else to speak before me. But anyways, I guess I didn't hear the entire item, but as far as office closures for whatever that holiday is coming up, it's just too bad that it's not a permanent closure of SANDAG. But anyways, the girl can only dream. Yep, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be the original draw. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that you guys are going to be auditing the things when you're talking about what you're going to be auditing when you need to be audited. When you guys are not doing what you should be doing, but you look at this as a business. You look at it as like, this is what SANDAG wants. It should be what San Diego wants. And, you know, obviously it's been proven time and again that the things that are being implemented aren't things that people want, are things that put people in extreme fire dangers, are, you know, totally changing neighborhoods and, you know, putting people in, you know, dire straits just with, I mean, things like bringing toll roads and stuff like that. So, I mean, if you guys really were doing what San Diego wanted and not what SANDAG needs, then you could be trusted. But it's like you are always going to protect the agency. You're never going to do what is necessary to make sure that people can get around, that, you know, the transit system works really well and that the roads are able to be used in a you know, productive fashion, that you're not putting, you know, bike lanes that cost up to $13 million that go to nowhere, that go to freeways. I mean, it's like, it's very evident that this business is going to continue because it's all about making money. And unfortunately, you guys are going to continue to protect that. And so, you know, it's just, we shouldn't be spending money on any of this. Like SANDAG should be brought to its knees and, you know, totally, you know, you can't even gut it because it's doing what it was intended to do. But, you know, people need better.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
Great. Do we have any member comments? No? See none, we're going to go on to item 3.1, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from our April meeting. Francesca, do we have any public comments on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We do have one public comment, the original draw. You can go ahead.
This is where I'm going to repeat that you guys are engaging in fraud, waste, and abuse with the item that you brought forward that was brought forward to the executive committee with the ERP and Tyler Technologies. So do you guys need to go ahead and audit this as you're bringing it forward and make sure? I mean, how much research have you guys done on this entity? None, right? Because it's like wanting to have, you know, all of the governments in its control, right? And that's not a problem when, you know, the people that are, you know, running the companies have very nefarious plans in mind. You guys seem to hate billionaires sometimes, and it's like, but not ones that have trillions of dollars of assets, right? And that can just take the government to its knees when the time is necessary. So I'm just wondering, when you guys are actually going to do your job and make sure that like we don't get into contracts like that. At any point, no, because you got to protect SANDAG, right? That's what you're doing, right? So it doesn't matter how many people are just trying to put food on the table for their kids. As long as SANDAG has its money, right, from those people that are, just giving their blood, sweat, and tears so that SANDAG can mismanage their hard-earned money and, but paint a pretty picture and say that we're doing this for your benefit. So it's so good, right? I mean, you guys should give yourselves a gold star because I really feel like, you are doing what you are set there to do. So, but at any point you can totally change it because obviously things are just going to shit. Yeah, but you're implementing it. So, guess it's up to you whether or not you want to course correct.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any member comments on this item? No, seeing none. Do I have a motion in a second?
Motion to approve consent calendar item.
Second. Okay, go ahead and vote.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Great, thank you. We're going to go on to item agenda number 4, which is the fiscal year 2025 annual comprehensive financial report and other audits. Jennifer Farr from Davis Farr will be presenting. And go ahead, Jennifer, whenever you're ready.
Hello, I'll just open it real quick, no problem. Kimberly Trammell, the Director of Accounting and Finance, and I just wanted to introduce the item and introduce our auditor. This is for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2025, and Jennifer will discuss the results of that audit and our financial statements. And with that, I'll introduce Jennifer Farr from Davis Farr.
Thank you and good afternoon, Chair and members of the Audit Committee. I have a short presentation to facilitate the audit results discussion. And as always, we look forward to your questions and good discussion after the presentation. Just starting off with the scope and timing of the audit, we started our initial audit procedures in July of 2025 for the June 30, 2025 fiscal year end, and we began the final audit procedures in mid-December, and we're able to finalize the audit in March 23rd of 2026, which is a couple days prior to the March 31st single audit deadline. Our audit includes 5 reports that are financial statement audit reports. We also issue TDA compliance audits, the single audit of federal grant awards, a letter to those in governance that summarizes the audit results, and 2 agreed upon procedures reports. Today, I'll mostly be focusing on the annual comprehensive financial report, South Bay Expressway, and the single audit report. In SANDAG's audit opinion this year, this is a snapshot from the first page of the audit opinion. It states that we issued an unmodified audit opinion this year. And I wanted to point out that this is a change from the prior year audit opinion. Then the prior year, we had a qualified audit opinion related to the toll revenues. This year, we performed additional testing over those toll revenues to feel confident that we could rely on the toll revenues and determine that they were not materially misstated. That included doing testing to verify the accuracy of the individual toll charges, testing a reconciliation between the back office system and the ERP system, verifying improvements that the system of internal controls That has improved since the original qualified opinion would allow SANDAG management the ability to detect if there was a problem with the back office system or with the toll capture system. And because of that additional testing, we felt confident that we're able to remove the qualified opinion. So congratulations to you to be able to accomplish that. Secondly, in the audit opinion is an emphasis of a matter. We're required to let the reader know anytime there's a change in the accounting standards. This year, there was an implementation of a new accounting standard that affected compensated absences. And we're also informing you in this section that there was a correction of a prior year error, and that prior year error related to construction in progress. And we can talk further about that as well. Our general audit approach is going to substantively test all material assets and liabilities through a variety of different procedures. And then we have more of an analytical testing of revenues and expenses, but where audit risk is identified, we do additional sampling and testing of revenues and expenses. Your materiality calculation this year was 1%, which is what we use for higher risk entities. For a moderate or low risk entity, we would use 2%. So that means the level in which we're looking at transactions is a lot lower for your entity in an attempt to detect errors. And we had several additional areas of audit focus this year. The first being the implementation of the new accounting standard. The toll road revenues was an area of audit focus where we performed additional procedures. We felt that the new lease at the West office location was a significant accounting transaction, and we performed additional procedures to test that transaction. The federal grant compliance is always going to be considered a high risk or an area of focus when you based on the amount of federal grants that you have. We also reviewed the Weaver assessment report in detail, every single finding, to evaluate how it impacted our audit procedures, whether or not we needed to change our scope or level of work that we were going to perform based on what was identified in that report. And similarly, we review every OIPA report. We review the findings to determine if we believe there's an increased risk of material misstatement, and we adjust our audit procedures accordingly. And then lastly, this year, we performed an unpredictability test. It's supposed to change every year. So this year, we did a sample of payroll transactions, so individual employee paychecks, and did full recalculations and testing of the system, and we did not find any issues related to that testing. I wanted to provide a little more information about the single audit results. Your total federal expenditures for the fiscal year ended were $122 million, and we were required to test 3 programs this year. And the programs are tested on kind of a rotational basis, and it's dependent on the amount that's spent. So for this year, we tested the Intercity Passenger Rail Program, the FHA Caltrans Highway Planning Construction Program, and the FTA, which is passed through Caltrans, the Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities. So while you might have other grant programs with higher dollar amounts expended during the year, you can feel pretty comfortable that every program gets tested on a rotational basis every 3 years. And so these are the 3 that were tested. As a result of our single audit testing, we did not identify any material instances of noncompliance. I did want to point out at footnote 13 in the annual comprehensive financial report, because that is where it discusses the accounting for the new lease at the West office facility. And when I did want to let you know that when we reviewed this lease, we did have a material audit adjustment related to this transaction. And it really wasn't the West lease as much as it was the old lease on the old building. It was still recorded on the books, both the lease asset and the accumulated depreciation. So as part of looking at the overall transaction, we were obviously aware of the fact that that you had moved out of the old building. And so that asset needed to be disposed of. And that was the basis for the journal entry. Moving on to our internal control recommendations this year, we continue to have an internal control recommendation related to journal entries detected during the audit. This year, we had 5 material journal entries that were detected during the audit process. And one of them was a prior period restatement, which in itself is considered an area of internal control weakness if we're able to issue a report and have an error in the prior year. I did want to point out that although the journal entries were material to the financial statements, they are all non-routine transactions and kind of unusual transactions and complex. And I'm definitely happy to get into the details of those later if you would like additional details. We also continue to have a recommendation about the timeliness of financial reporting. This year, the plan was to start the audit at the beginning of November, and we ended up that ended up being delayed, and we did not get started until mid-December, which again led to a delay. The goal would be to try to have the audit completed and your financial statements finalized by the end of the calendar year. And we did have that plan going into this year, but SANDAG's staff resources were not able to have the audit ready or have the books closed or ready for audit in time, which led to the delay. We also have an internal control recommendation related to the toll back office systems. It's a little different than last year. We wanted to let you know that there are still some immaterial variances and differences between the detail in the back office system and what is recorded in the ERP system. So, for example, the customer account balances in the ERP system is about $33,000 different than what is in the accounting system. And that it's due to known errors in the back office system. It's just that those errors have not quite been reconciled yet. But we did feel comfortable that the errors are immaterial and that it did not affect the audit opinion. We also discussed this year the reasons why the toll penalty receivable is increasing significantly from prior years, and understand that it has to do with the ER or the back office system's inability to communicate with the California DMV. So when someone tries to get their car registered, it's not flagging it and saying you can't do that because you haven't paid your bill to SANDAG. So that ultimately is impacting your ability to collect on toll penalties. And then we had another recommendation, which is not considered a material weakness. And actually we had 2 in here, this area. One of them is just related to some immaterial differences that we identified between the accounts payable module and what is in the accounting system. Ideally, those systems should balance exactly, and there shouldn't be any differences. So the fact that there are small differences at any period of time is an indication that something between the 2 systems isn't communicating correctly. And then lastly, this is a repeat comment from last year in the ERP accounts, particularly for ARGIS. The detail level in the accounting system is very combined, and then it's broken out into detail for the financial statements. And you want your accounting system to support your financial statements in a way that you're not having to do a lot of manipulation to get from point A to point B. So anyone at any point can go back and and be able to see how your accounting system supports the audited financial statements. And so we'd like to see some changes in that area, potentially creating new accounts in the ERP system. So there would be more of a one-to-one ratio between those accounts. And again, I apologize, these are kind of technical issues. And lastly, I just wanted to let you know that our working relationship with SANDAG staff and the finance team is great. Every single person we work with wants to do a great job, is responsive to our request, and we have the kind of a relationship where we can discuss complicated accounting transactions and work together to find the solution. So that makes the process easier and it creates more accurate financial statements for you. And then two last things, we're required to communicate significant estimates. These are numbers that we can do our best to audit, but at the end of the day, they are just estimates. One of them is those judgments between what is maintenance and what to capitalize on a capital project. And then two more significant ones are the pension liability and the other post-employment benefit calculations. Those amounts are determined by actuaries using actuarial science. So by nature, they are estimates. They're our best guess of what those liabilities are. And lastly, we're required to let you know if we became aware of any errors in the accounting records, but chose not to record them because they were not material. And we did identify some immaterial errors in the accounts payable balances that I've discussed previously. And also kind of at the very last minute, there's some receivables and payables in the funds that are better classified as due from other funds. So it might show up as a receivable in a fund, but it's really a due from another fund. These amounts were immaterial, and management made the decision to correct them on a go-forward basis, which was acceptable for our audit. So that ends my prepared comments, and I believe Kimberly has some comments as well, and then maybe we'll open it up for questions after. Do you want that?
If we could switch over to the second presentation. I just want to, so my part of the presentation is to really provide management's response to the areas that Jennifer identified. But I really want to take this opportunity to take a minute and say we are very proud of the unmodified opinion, and our team worked really hard to get to this opinion. As Jennifer said, they did additional testing, which meant we did a lot of additional work, providing a lot of additional information. It's a year-round effort of analyzing what the financial reports that are coming out of the back office system and identifying any variances, facilitating corrections. So I really want to thank the team for the hard work that they put into this. And that is, you know, part of the timing of this audit was really continuing to make sure that we were getting all the information the auditors needed to really feel comfortable with the audit opinion. And I will say that correcting the qualified opinion has been a major priority of the department for the last couple years. So, because we've been busy. And so I just kind of want to set the stage a little bit. The accounting and finance department has had quite a few high priority projects over the last few years. This morning, Mario used an analogy that he uses sometimes to compare our work to basically driving a car and at the same time trying to give it a tune-up and change the tires. And this definitely hits home for the finance department. We have been in a constant cycle of finish year-end audit work, start the next project, and then head into the next year audit. And we're doing this while we're making sure we're doing our everyday normal tasks like paychecks and paying our vendors, doing our reporting that's required throughout the year, and making sure we're billing and bringing in the revenues. So those are kind of our basic components of driving that car, and we have had we've been keeping those running while also trying to make improvements in areas that have been identified. I step back and think of the ERP system implementation as kind of taking that car and switching out the old combustion engine with an electric engine. It's a big changeover, and if any of you have gone electric, you know there's an adjustment period. You got to figure out what's the best time to charge that electric car. We didn't buy the whole electric car. We just bought the engine. So we're now looking at all the processes and procedures around that and saying, do we need to change those out? How do they need to adjust? So it's, an electric car needs different brakes than a typical combustion engine car. So I think it's a good analogy for us. On the ERP system, that effort, as we spoke at the last audit committee, started in 22, and really before that, the system went live in January of 24. So the 25 audit that we're looking at is the first full year that was in the new ERP system. I think some of the things that you heard Jennifer talk about are results of us still learning and understanding how that system works. The AP situation is really, are we running the right reports when we're trying to give the auditors the information? Are we doing the various actions that are part of that report in the right timing? Because once that fiscal year is a cutoff, and there's some things you can do after that, and there's other things you can't do after that in the system. And so that can cause timing and explanation of variances. So we're still learning that ERP system. And we're still working on updating all of the procedures around our activities that relate to the ERP system. Last year, in preparation for the finance department audit, we went through and updated over 40 of our procedures, and then got more feedback on those during the audit. So we'll be updating some of them again, but we also have other ones that still need to be looked at. Payroll went live in the new system in July of 25. And so all of the payroll procedures are something that we'll be working on. And while payroll was live in the system with the first paycheck in July, the payroll team continued to work on that implementation until the middle of fall, late September, we had to convert all of the balances. So just because we kind of give a go live date of this is when we issued a check out of it, doesn't mean that everything related to the implementation was complete. And what ended up happening there is that led to delays in our implementing the GASB standard that Jennifer mentioned for compensated absences. We experienced quite a few other complications, and I think you heard a lot of them in the last presentation. I would add that we also had a vacancy with our capital assets accountant. So that's been something we've been able to fill the position, and we're bringing that person up to speed. But it did make facilitating and physical inventory across the agency as part of the audit and producing our capital asset schedules a little delayed. We talked about, or a number of things were mentioned, like the West lease. That was definitely another one that took a lot of time and attention and was an unusual item. We also ran into legal settlements that needed to be reflected in our 25 financials, and even a correction from another agency to our revenues. So just a number of things that came up during the audit that were addressed, but do add to our timing. The timeline in front of you shows a few of our other competing priorities, such as the finance department assessment. We discussed at our last audit committee some of our remaining ERP enhancements that the team is still working on. Shanae mentioned the TCA back office implementation that it just kicked off last week. We'll be hitting the ground running, assisting with that. And that has been an active project for the last couple of years as well. So despite all of these other projects and competing priorities, we did get the trial balance and the financial statements to the auditors a little earlier than last year. Not as early as we would have liked, but earlier than last year. And we really plan to continue to improve upon the timeliness of the financials for the next year. So to address the 3 internal control recommendations, I want to tell you what we have in the works and planned for going forward. We are going to continue to work on our internal controls framework, our policy and procedure updates. This is relevant to what also came out of the finance department assessment. So this was something that was already on our radar. We are going to provide continued technical training to our accounting staff. In just this calendar year so far, we've done internal controls training, GASB 103 training, which is an upcoming accounting standard, introduction to governmental accounting for some of our entry-level staff, and capital asset training. We have intermediate governmental accounting training coming up this month. And we really try to offer these to as many individuals in the department that can attend. We also continue to provide training to other SANDAG staff on the ERP system, especially, and really our accounting processes. This we find helps with the initial data entry or information being used for our finances, and can help streamline our processes. We're already working on improving procedures around monthly and quarterly reconciliations as part of the response to the finance department assessment, which will then turn into more timely financial statements. We are revising our year-end reporting calendar to help keep the team aware of what tasks need to happen and when and how they're interconnected. That's a big one. The fiscal year 26 audit will have another significant GASB implementation that will need to be coordinated with other SANDAG departments. The one we just did was kind of all in the payroll and accounting group, but the one that's coming up has impacts on budget and on our management discussion and analysis, so that has a bigger agency impact. We're building this effort into our calendar, and we'll start working on it. We're probably really getting a late start on it compared to some of the other agencies. But we'll also be working on doing our capital assets sooner and making that something that is happening throughout the year. Again, now that we filled that vacancy, it helps us to be more proactive throughout the year. And finally, I do have a finance manager position that has been vacant and is in the recruitment right now. So one more example that we can give of something that we're looking at to really help streamline our process is that we've been reviewing thresholds for things like prepaids and capital assets. We're trying to create efficiencies here. If we're looking at every small $200 item, we may be not using our time most wisely. And so if we have some thresholds, if we review the thresholds that are in place and assess if they're appropriate or could be higher, we could achieve staff efficiencies and have staff really looking into the things that need attention that are material to our financial statements. And then just to kind of talk about the last finding, our tolling back office system. So I'll reiterate, we are planning on moving to a back office system with TCA. That'll be about a year from now before we're in that system. So we're going to have another 2 fiscal year audits with the current back office system. The TCA system does allow for DMV holds, which is a way to collect on violators on the toll roads. And in the meantime, we'll continue to use the ETAN system. We have been working closely with ETAN since the extension to try to improve the information that we're able to get out of the system and how we get it out of the system. And as I said earlier, our toll accounting team works very closely to review the ETAN reports each month, look for any variances that might need to be addressed. This is a resource-intensive approach, but it has been effective and will continue to do so until we move into a new system. And I would say that a lot of what we find that's not that is causing problems with our financial reporting in the back office system are situations where something unusual is happening. So maybe a customer calls in and complains and we need to make an adjustment to their account. Those are the types of things that cause the variances. We know what they are. And so it's not any kind of widespread action that's happening. It's really kind of one-offs that will add up over time, but are things we can address. Between the 25 audit presentation today and the Finance Department assessment recommendations and other audit reports that we've received, we have identified areas of improvement and a clear path forward. We are prioritizing the process improvements and corrective actions so they are both manageable and achievable. In following up on last year's findings, I'm pleased to report that one was resolved, while the second remains an open item in fiscal year 25, but also an area of focus in our corrective action plans. Looking forward to the fiscal year 26 audit, I'd like to be realistic about the timeline. With only 2 months remaining in the fiscal year, our capacity is focused on the mandatory implementation for the accounting standard. Because of this and other priority projects, we do not expect all outstanding corrective actions to be finalized before the next audit cycle. We're committed to improving the timeliness of our annual financial statements, but our highest priority is the integrity and the quality of those financial statements. Ultimately, the department is focused on a balanced approach, ensuring we maintain our core operations. We're going to continue driving the car while making disciplined progress on our path to improvement. We're replacing one tire at a time, not all four at the same time. And really, it's a balancing act, but we're, as Jennifer said, it's a great team. Everybody is really wanting to do the work well and provide the board and the community with the transparent financial information that they need. So with that, I'll conclude and just mention that this item will go to the board in June, and they'll also hear it.
Great, thank you. I sure appreciate the passion which you spoke about your team, Kimberly and Jennifer. Thank you for the clear report. You know, I'm sure it's a little bit hard sometimes if you have to be very honest about what's going on and the person responsible is sitting right next to you. So I appreciate the partnership between you two. Are there any public comments, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. If you're a member of the public online and would like to speak, please raise your hand now. I see two hands, Gambler and Consuelo. We'll start with Gambler. You can go ahead. Gambler, you are self-muted at the moment. Okay, let's go ahead to Consuelo and then I will come back to Gambler. Consuelo, you can go ahead.
Okay, Consuelo. So let's see. The analogy of the car. Yeah, you know, honestly, sometimes you need to know when to just stop trying to fix it and you know, junk it and get the car towed to the junkyard, honestly. And with that being said, I just have to say this first. This isn't personal to the staff in the room. This is about the agency itself and whoever it ultimately answers to. So, quick question, who's auditing the auditors? Because from the outside, this looks like the system checking itself and then telling the public everything's fine. No accountability there. And most people in the county, again, like a broken record, don't even know that SANDAG exists. Let's see. But yet you're shaping how they move, what they pay, and how their daily lives are structured. And since they're funding it, you know, it would be nice for them to know who in fact you guys are, because that's a problem. And when decisions impact millions of people and those people don't even know who's behind them or how they're made, that is totally lack of responsibility and representation, sorry. So we hear audit, oversight, transparency, but again, who is actually holding you all accountable in a truly independent way? Or is this just government investigating itself and calling it integrity? At some point, we have to ask, is this really serving the people? Or is it just another layer people are forced to pay for? Because the public is paying for all of it. They deserve to know who's making the decision. Did I say that? Yeah, I already.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Gambler. You can go ahead.
How you guys doing this fine and lovely day? Now, I've been going through and figuring out why we do things and why we spend money on basically reducing transportation for people. Cut the way that people are moving around and all that stuff because you're trying to move to bike lanes. Then I figured out the incentive structure. You guys are only just looking at how you guys can make money. Well, our funds are cut. We don't have money for the infrastructure because of Proposition 13. Every single action you guys take, the government takes, it cuts the funding source. So what? You guys are working together with them, trying to figure out different ways to take our money away from us? Mileage tax and all that stuff, but at the same time pushing us out of our cars. The only reason why you guys are fixing the roads right now is because you want to move to automated cars. It's amazing how much friggin' work you're doing on the roads when we've been begging you to do it all this time. The only reason why you're doing it now is because of what, Waymo? Are you really that disgusting of people that you could care less about the people in their future? Just for a quick buck, for a quick answer, without actually doing investigation and seeing what is wrong with our structure. How about this? If we were to recycle our plastic, we would have more gas. We could also make better batteries than lithium and cobalt that requires slave labor. We could make them out of carbon, the byproduct of recycling plastic. $2 billion could go into our infrastructure if we just recycle plastic. But hell no. Each and every single one of you guys sitting over there that got elected have no problem sending that technology to the private sector, eliminating that revenue source to go ahead and fix our roads, give us what we need, and all that stuff. No, you guys are looking for the quick buck.
Thank you. Your time has expired. That concludes the public comments.
Great, thank you. I'm sure that my colleagues have some questions. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair Fisher. I didn't mean to be the first one, but I'm glad to begin, if that's okay with my colleagues. Thank you very much, Ms. Jennifer Farr and Ms. Trammell, for presenting to us today. I do have questions. Right now, I was taking a peek at some of the agenda items on item 4, and the presentation didn't, I know that you did say that it was going to focus on some of these audits or some of these agenda items, but it didn't, I don't think it did cover the Transportation Development Acts report or which is item 3, I believe, and then the Coronado Toll Bridge. And I think those reports had nothing to report, right? It was fine. Can you comment on that, either of you?
Yes, you're correct. The transportation development audits are performed over the recipients of the funding at the different jurisdictions, and we had finalized those audits within a similar time frame, and we typically don't do a separate presentation on the results of those audits, but SANDAG has a copy of all the audits, and each of the jurisdictions also has a copy of the audit results, but there were no significant findings with those. And similarly with the Coronado Toll agreed upon procedures, it's a fairly straightforward list of procedures that we perform, and there are not significant findings with those procedures as well.
Okay, well, I do appreciate that there are no significant procedures, and even though we're not presenting on them, these are audits that are good. Kudos to SANDAG and everybody involved, right? So even though we're not stating it, it is on our reports and things are fine by every regard there. So let me begin with the items that were pointed out in the presentation. And Ms. Farr, if I can first ask you, you mentioned several times immaterial. And if you can help me understand briefly, the difference between a material finding and an immaterial finding or immaterial thing.
Yes, the concept of materiality is actually very complex. So it's great that you're asking that question. In the financial statements, every time that you see a column of numbers presented, so that could either be a fund or several funds combined, each one has its own materiality threshold. So the materiality for South Bay Expressway, for example, would be the greater of 1% of assets or 1% of revenue. So that means when we're testing the South Bay Expressway transactions, we are using that number to drive our thresholds for what we are going to sample. So to get into a little more weeds from that 1%, we will calculate what we call a high risk individually significant item and a low risk individually significant item, which is 10 to 20% of that number. So anytime we're testing transactions of receivables and we see something over that threshold, we're going to test it. And so the way the auditing standards are designed is that we can't possibly look at every transaction, but by using this method of identifying individually significant items, we can feel comfortable that we are not missing the material errors or the big errors in the financial statements. But we have a very large spreadsheet, and every time we come across a potential error, we have to go to that spreadsheet to decide, is this a material error? Is it an immaterial error? And if it's immaterial, that's when management decides what they want to do with it. If it's material, they don't get a choice. We say we have to fix it. That's kind of the way it works. And I'm sorry, that's a long answer.
No, but it is helpful. It is helpful. So it is basically the threshold is based on a math equation.
Yes.
Whether something is material or immaterial is based on a math equation, based on that threshold. And were any of the findings material?
Yes, we had 5 material
The
journal
5 that you
entries.
mentioned were material.
Yes.
Okay, and those were the ones that you mentioned in detail, a bit of
Yes.
detail. Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question on
Please.
that one?
Microphone.
Oops. So that 5 material one, or all the material one together, what's the scope and the amounts, like, and how much impacting the total assets versus the net income, the bottom line?
The dollar amount, for example, on the West lease, the adjustment was in the $9 million range, but it was an asset and an offsetting asset. So the impact on equity on the bottom line was very small. So I would say I wrote down the dollar, the smallest one is $1 million. So we're talking $1 million transactions, generally speaking.
Any of those impact the income, net income number?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And these are the what you call post-start adjustments, right? So these are adjustments that auditors found after you started the audit. Okay.
Correct.
Can you also talk about the prior period adjustment? Because I think that has to be pretty large in order for you to classify as a prior period adjustment. Maybe talk a little bit more about that, the scope, the amount, and the nature of it.
Definitely. The prior period adjustment was $23 million, and it was detected during our audit procedures because we routinely ask about the status of items that are considered construction in progress. So for this particular one, we were asking about the status of the project. It was a project with NCTD on a rail purchase of trains. So we had asked about the status of it. And in that, this is a good example of our working relationship. In that process, we're looking for an answer of, is the project done or is the project not done? But in that process, SANDAG staff stepped back and said, why do we even have this project on our books? Because this asset is not, it's not SANDAG's asset. SANDAG's funding the project, but unlike other projects where SANDAG takes the lead on the project, they record those assets on their books until the project is done, and then they'll donate them to the recipient jurisdiction. This one was different. This one was one where SANDAG's truly just providing the funding. NCTD is leading the project. And so it should never have been a construction and progress account. It should have been expensed in the first year. So we missed that last year. The SANDAG team missed that last year, but it's through the open discussions about it that we were able to collectively find the error and make a correction to the financial statement.
And I'll just add, it went back a few years when it had originally been recorded as construction in progress. And that kind of starts early on in the project. So it's possible there was something early on in the project that it made sense, or we just didn't have all of the information that we needed to correctly categorize it. So maybe something changed, but when we looked at it and understood all of the details related to it, we said, no, this should never have been in our construction in progress. So we made that correction, but it was after we had turned over the initial trial balance.
I have more to ask, but if there's follow-up questions on this one, I don't want to, skip over. Did you have anything more,
No, go
Ms.
ahead.
Agnes? Another phrase that you used, Ms. Farr, was uncorrected misstatements. Can you help me understand that a little bit more?
Yes, it gets back to that math equation. So if we have anything material, we have to correct, and anything that's not material is in a bucket of a decision that management has to make to determine if they want to correct those amounts. So if we identify something that is immaterial that we know is an error, and management chooses not to correct it, then we're required to communicate that to you. And so those were, I think, just two small adjustments related to accounts payable. And I believe the accounts payable ones were in the, 10,000, 20,000 sort of range, very small dollar amounts.
So these are immaterial, meaning they didn't meet that threshold, and that's why they're qualified as immaterial. And perhaps Ms. Trammell, you can help me understand, is why would management choose to not correct them, to keep them uncorrected?
We normally would not. It was very, very late in the process of getting the financials done, and we were coming up on our March 31st deadline for our federal. So it's a lot of work. It's changing a number from category A to category B, but it's a lot of work because everything's interconnected and it all flows through. So that was the basis for not making those corrections. It was towards the very end of the audit. I mean, we'd already signed some of we had it pretty much ready to go and said, okay, it's not the right time to make these, but they will be made in the 26th fiscal year. And so it's not like we don't correct them at all. It's just in the financial statements for the prior fiscal year, they're not there.
Okay. I have just a few more questions. Can you
actually,
yes, please,
if you don't mind, follow on the prior period adjustment? Maybe Kimberly, you can talk about, what new controls that will be in place so we don't have this happen. I mean, I can see small amount being missed, but this is a big project, right? So don't know where it went wrong. Is it the staff turnover, manager turnover? So they're just a miscommunication? Because it is a big number.
It is a big number. And so again, it goes back a few years. And initially when a project is started, a construction project is started, it comes to accounting and we determine, should it be capitalized? What should be capitalized? And so it's really about getting all of the project information at that time. So one of the things our capital asset accounting area really is going to work on is kind of that relationship with the other parts of SANDAG, because we need to make sure that we're getting good information from the project managers. And so part of that is also doing this more than just at year end. It's having regular touch points and making sure that we're getting information as it's current, not later. And I think, the more something is fresh in somebody's mind, the more full picture you're going to get. So we really are looking at in the capital assets, creating regular touch points with those that know the construction projects and making sure that we're getting the information. We do a questionnaire. And so on the questionnaire, we should be getting the information that we need to make these determinations. And so that's something as well that we can look at. Is the questionnaire clear to a non-accountant? Are we making sure that they are understanding what we're asking and what we need? And so that's the other thing kind of I mentioned is that training others on our process or why we do things can also be very helpful to making sure that we're getting good information and able to prepare our financial statements and really reflect what's going on in the agency.
And I hope that your accounting staff has good enough information, either the contract or the grant itself, right? So it's better to read the legal document and understand it rather than hearing from someone. They just probably interpreting what they think they know. They could make a mistake too. Right?
Very true.
Yeah, okay.
Ms. Trammell, how many individuals make up our accounting and finance team here at SANDAG?
So my group has 26 employees. We also work very closely with, of course, the construction department, which is another group of employees, and the financial planning, budgets, and grants department.
Okay. Do you happen to know how big or how many people are employed as part of SANDAG as a whole?
SANDAG, we can say this a few different ways, but I'll go when I approve payroll, I see about 430 employees on the payroll, but there's different ways to look at it. There's FTEs and authorized positions, but I'll give you my payroll answer.
Yeah. And 26 of those individuals are in finance.
Yes.
And okay, thank you. And Ms. Farr, how many individuals worked on these 6 audits?
I would have to count that.
Roughly.
If you include the TDA audits, maybe 10 to 12 individuals.
Okay, thank you. And then just 2 more questions for Ms. Trammell. There was one point where you said a correction from another agency. It's difficult, or one of the complicated pieces of this year's audit, or the financial statements and this and that. It was having to make corrections from another agency to our revenues. Was that in reference to like the toll revenues and the DMV stuff?
Yes. So
it
was toll revenues, and another agency identified that they had an error in their system, and so that they actually owed us money. So we have collected that money, but this came to light in January. 7 months after the end of the fiscal year, but it was material. We went through the materiality testing, and so we identified that we needed to book an entry for that correction.
Okay. And that's really the gist of what this correction from another agency to our revenues, that was it. Like that encompasses what this meant.
That was what I was referencing in my presentation. I don't know if you're looking at it.
It was in reference to what you had stated. And then my last question for now is capital assets getting started a little late. What did you mean by that? I think you said in reference to the GASB requirement.
So as I said, we really want to get to the point where we're doing our capital asset review and updates throughout the year. We lost our capital asset accountant last December, December of 24. We filled that position midway through this audit process, but we had somebody else filling in that position throughout it. So that person was having to learn something that he hadn't done previously, as well as we do a physical inventory every 2 years. And so I should say we facilitate a physical inventory. And so we had to do that. And again, we had somebody that was just learning it and how to work with all of the other areas of SANDAG to go through and make sure those assets are still there. So it just meant that it took longer to, anytime you pick up something that you haven't done before, there's that learning curve. And so it delayed that.
So the delay is because of the turnover.
It is primarily turnover. Again, physical inventory piece, I think, is something that there's probably room for efficiencies in it as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Appreciate your question. Ms. Agnes, did you have any more questions that you'd like to share? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, first of all, I want to say good job that, changing it from qualified to unqualified report. That's a big, improvement. So I really want to say kudos to you and your team. There are some pretty major findings, and it sounds like you are on your way to correct them. I do want to understand a little bit more about a couple of things. So I think you both mentioned that there are some issues about the subledger, like AR and AP don't tie to the general ledger, right, in the ERP. Are the AR and AP subledgers, are they part of the Taylor system? Still, they don't.
So
to it. Yeah.
yes, it's all part of the same system. So I wouldn't say that the AP one's a little complicated. And as I said, I think it really goes back to, are we using the right reports? Are we running them at the right time? Are we doing some of the actions? So a lot, what we found was it was around like a check had been issued, a check had been voided. You also void the invoice in the system. So there's all these steps that need to happen. And it's something where we need to understand the system better to make sure we're doing all of those steps in the right order. So some things were a variance because they happened in 26. Well, they started in 25 and then let's say finished in 26. So that is what was causing the two pieces that we were looking at to be different. If maybe one of those pieces of the report from the system isn't quite the right report we should be using. And so I think there's many aspects to that variance that we were seeing.
So maybe another way to ask my question too. So these differences have been reconciled, right?
Yes.
So you know what they caused them, but have not been able to make the two, because they're supposed to be the same, right? It's just okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, but you know what the cause of the, okay, that's good. And then another question I have, since you talked about monthly closing, year-end closing, how to improve the process. I remember one of the meetings we had, we found out you actually don't do a hard close each month. I want to see if that, has changed since, because it is problematic if the monthly number could change, so management really cannot rely on those monthly report because it could be different.
So we do not have a hard monthly close. That has not changed. And part of it is the nature of so many grants and how we bill for the grants. So we do have the ability to post something back to a prior period. What we're putting in place is really a system of making sure that all of the things that need to happen in the month are happening. It's just not giving it a hard close. So we're going through, there's a checklist. These things need to happen at the end of every month, but there's still that ability, as I said, to post back.
Okay, so it's just a strange concept for me that there's no hard month-end closing, because usually a lot of places, okay, if you pass the month-end close, it'll be next month's activities, but at least the monthly report is fixed, right? Once you close it,
correct.
That's the number.
Yes, and we're doing a lot of report building out of the system, and that is something that we have to make sure we caveat and make people aware of, is that this is the information as of the state, and some of that can change. So we'll continue to look at that.
Yeah, I would suggest that you maybe have someone to help you to look at that to see if there's any way, because I think most places do that, right?
So the focus right now has really been on, let's make sure all of the things that need to happen monthly are happening, and putting the tools into place to make sure that we are on top of it on a monthly basis or quarterly, as some things are.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Yeah. Member Zito, go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, ladies. Really appreciate the presentation. I will say, also want to add my congratulations to getting done qualified. That's been a big effort. And the other thing I wanted to mention, and I'll say this without putting Ms. Farr on the spot, but I really appreciated your comments about the collaboration, working arrangement with staff. I mean, I could be wrong, but my recollection is when you were first here, that's not the feeling I was getting, that there wasn't as good of a working relationship as there is now. And I really appreciate seeing that is the case at this point and that it's working well. Can you refresh my memory? Is this year 3 or year 4 that you've been doing this for SANDAG? Do you remember?
I believe this is the end. This is year 3.
This is year 3, so you have 2 more years.
I believe they're option years.
Pardon, with option years after that?
Yes, I believe it's 3, and the next year is an option year.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's important. I mean, I'll lead into, so one example is, I guess my first question is, in order to get to this point, you mentioned you had to do some extra testing and thus extra information provided by the organization. And I'm going to work with the assumption, unless you tell me differently, that this is going to have to continue as long as we're using ETAN and move, or do you think there's other improvements that's going to prevent us from, in order to keep an unqualified opinion, to prevent us from having to do that extra testing?
There's definitely some of the testing that we did this year that we'll want to continue. In some cases, for example, if we tested a sample of 60 transactions and found no errors, it allows us to reduce our sample size the following year to maybe 40 transactions. And then there will always be something new, as mentioned, the new accounting standard next year that'll be a focus. So I don't think the amount of work will ever get less, but the focus might shift a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not just the amount of work, it's also relative to, and maybe our staff has the expertise now, but for example, if our auditor were to switch out, would it be that much more of a learning curve to figure out how to get to a unqualified opinion again or not? And just goes along just maybe me making an off-topic comment. I've really appreciated the work that you've been doing. I hope we're able to continue to use your firm for the next few years to keep these efficiencies going, since you have this learned knowledge. But if we had to switch for some reason, is this learning all over again, and we may end up not being able to do this type of deeper review and thus get a unqualified opinion? Any thoughts?
I can tell you that this is a very complex organization, and I have learned more about toll revenues in the last couple of years than I ever thought I would ever need to know. It is definitely an undertaking for anyone new to this organization to get into the weeds in a level where you can detect errors.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. And then relative to that, I mean, just one other question that I may have actually previously asked, but in the audit report, it says we are not a low risk organization. I'm assuming that's just the nature of the organization and it's not directly a result of the outcome or unqualified opinions. I mean, is there something we could do to change that no to a yes? Is this a low risk organization?
In the single audit report is where it says you're not a low risk organization. Right. And that is that's defined by the OMB standards. So you have to have there's several criteria. One of them is not having material weaknesses. So anytime you have a material weakness, it's going to keep you in that not a low risk category. It's not bad to be not a low risk, I want to say high risk, but a not low risk auditee. What it means is that your auditors are required to test 40% of your total federal grants, as opposed to only testing 20%.
Right.
So from your perspective, it's not a bad thing. It just means you're getting more dollars are being required to be audited.
Right. I would say, well, from a public perspective, it's perhaps not a bad thing to be auditing more. But on the other hand, if that categorization is a result from findings, it seems like you'd really prefer to have a categorization of yes, you are low risk because we're not finding anything, right?
That's true.
And it sounds like we can't get there then. It's just a matter of not getting opinions. Relative to that, then, and apologies, I've asked this question again in previous years. I'm just checking in again, but the 2 findings that occurred last year, the second one, which was, I think, relative to the single audit, was the federal grant stuff, was you said it's been resolved, but once again, when our auditors do audit findings and something gets resolved, they actually test and say, was this process control put in place and is it working? And is that something you've done, or do you just say it didn't happen this year, so it's resolved?
The audit finding that was resolved related to errors in preparing the schedule of federal expenditures for the single audit. So this year, when we did our testing, we did not find any errors in the schedule of expenditure of federal awards. So in that case, we did test it and it is considered resolved. It doesn't mean that the problem won't occur next year.
Yeah, and I guess the question I would ask maybe for you, Kimberly, is the recommendation was that SANDAG improve or enhance the system of internal controls. Was that done?
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Great.
So on the federal findings, our federal agencies that we get funding from often follow up and ask, what have we done? And we provide the documentation to the federal agency. So we did that in this case. We produced a additional process for making sure that we are providing our quarterly reports in a timely manner. And so all of that was sent to the federal agency and they reviewed and also agreed that the finding should be cleared.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. That's great. I wasn't quite sure what the closure was on that, but so it works through going through the federal agency. So they're the ones actually tracking these findings for the single audit and making sure that the work is being done and followed up on.
They have a follow-up process.
Awesome. Thank you. I noticed for recommendations this year on one of the findings, it was doing more process and formality around the closure. But that also seems like that may cause things to delay further. Are we going to be able to implement those processes and actually get the closure put in place without causing us to slip further out with respect to handing off the materials to the auditor for the upcoming audit year?
So we have a lot of different areas that we're trying to balance. And so some of the things that came out of the finance department assessment are things that we've already been working on. Some of the things that came out of this recent audit are things that we have identified a plan, but we aren't necessarily ready to move forward on it. So we really are going to go back and look at all of the items that we have in the plan and say, what's the highest priority one to do for the fiscal year 26 process. And one of the ones Jennifer mentioned was our ERP system and how the accounts are structured doesn't necessarily lead towards our financial statements. Like there's a step in the middle between what ERP is giving us and what we're putting in the financial statements. So that's one we've already started the process on because we have to do it now. Like if we can't wait until July to fix that, we have to have it in and implemented in the system. So we've prioritized that one as higher as something we have to do now. And if we do it now, it'll be ready for the 26 financial and the audits associated with the financial statements. There's going to be some that we are not going to get to for 26. We're just too far along in the year to be able to put something in place that will make everything in the 26 audit turn out wonderful. So we're doing our best to really figure out what are the things we can do now, what are the things that are going to take a little bit longer. Reconciliations is another one that came out of the finance department assessment. We're moving forward with, okay, let's make sure we have the complete list of reconciliations. Let's make sure we are tracking when they are done and that they are done. That will help for our year-end close this year. We need to write a process around it. We need to write a procedure around it. That's next. It's coming up. That probably won't be in place for our year-end financial and the associated audit. So just to give you an idea, we're trying to break it down and make some progress and put in place the key ones that will help based on the due dates for some of these, as well as based on the timing of the upcoming audit.
Yeah, thanks. And you actually sort of addressed my follow-up question, which was exactly that, in that we only have 2 months left in the fiscal year. So in the areas that there are recommendations, it sounds like you've looked at this, but you don't know which areas yet we're likely to be able to tackle. It sounds like you're still working through that for this fiscal year.
Yes, that's what I just said.
Right. Okay.
But I also just gave you 2 examples of these are the ones we're running with. So, so while I would say it's probably not written out and beautifully and ready to go the way I want it to be, I think we have the steps in place and we're starting to take them.
Okay. Yeah. And, so yeah, and I'll there's no easy answer to this. I know you guys are working hard on it. I just hope that Your team is providing the information to management on, I personally think, as you're well aware, I mean, when Davis Farr first came on, the first year they were here, we were trying to hand off the audit information by the middle of October. That was the goal. And, last year we hit the middle of December or early December. And I'm like, I think it's important that we figure out how to shift those up because, you already talked about how much it impacts the efficiency of your team. And so if there are things that could be done with respect to staffing or help just to get over a hump, to get back to where we are doing things on the schedule that we would like to do them on, meaning October-ish, early November instead of December. I hope that's being communicated to management and back to the board, so they have this choice point in front of them, because I think it's hugely important. The conversation, my colleagues made some great comments, asked some great questions. The conversation happened, well, you didn't fix those book entries because you're running towards the end of the year, end of the schedule. We needed to get the audit done. It would just be great to get all of that out of the picture and move this up. And I appreciate the team working hard on it. I just want to make sure that that you're getting the appropriate attention and support in order to do that. So, and then just to reiterate what I said earlier as well, because of the need of the efficiency of doing this toll road, I hope the organization chooses to extend the option and that you guys continue to choose to hold on so we can continue to work through this hump over the next couple of years. But thanks. Those are my comments.
No, I just want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues that, it's very evident that the team's been working very hard. As an elected official, and I think my colleagues would agree that the thing that's most important is making sure we safeguard, any funds that come from taxpayers, and making sure we account for them really well. And I agree that if there's anything that you need as far as resources to get this done, because this seems like the team is working hard with lots of balls in there and lots of new systems to do it. I hope that is communicated and brought to tomorrow, the board if needed, just because I don't think it's more important to throw staff at projects and do more projects. I think it's more important that the baseline of how the finances are handled and the oversight over that is done. Because I think having the delays have been some concerns for people. And again, this is super complex. I'm sure that most people don't even look at their own bank account to figure out where they're at. I'm sure that the accounting process here are insane, for a lack of a better word. I will say I do have a question about the no hard monthly close. Is that consistent with agencies similar to SANDAG?
I would tell you that most government agencies don't have a hard monthly close, although some do. I would say it's less common to have the hard monthly close.
Yeah. Well, and I think that brings about the fact that, in the private sector and lots of business, I know business assignment, we have hard monthly close, but we don't have grant funding. We don't have all these other outlying fingers. It's revenue, expenses, and they're very straightforward. There might be some outlying, accounts that are payable, but it's good to hear that, because again, we find a lot of people want to find fault with how we do things. So if it's generally that's the system, and it makes a lot of sense, because there's things that you may not be able to just track and have a stop date. So thank you for answering. That's super important to understand. So it was mentioned that the DMV is currently not able to collect toll penalties and stuff like that. Do you have a number that would possibly be? Or an estimate? Again, I don't want you to, have to make up a number. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I do not have that. It's something we have looked at, but we have to go back quite a few years to get any SANDAG history. It's definitely something, as we're working with TCA, that we'll talk to them about and how much they're able to collect through that. And it's you still go through a process within the toll operations where you try to collect that toll, escalate the violation, and then it has to be there's some criteria before we can turn it over to DMV and say, can you put a hold on this person's registration so that we can collect the toll?
Yeah, because if my memory serves me correctly, which may not, at a board meeting, I think it was last year at some point, they talked about we had to kind of write off the penalties. It wasn't the actual tolls, it was the penalties. And I think it was like $82 million or something like that.
We went to the board with a write-off and did the initial one that is actually reflected in our financial statements. We'll be doing another one that's actually following that board action. And then as we transition to the TCA back office system, we'll probably be having further discussions with the board on that accounts receivable balance and how to resolve it.
Okay. And I think what I'm looking at is probably the next time we have the audit go through, it's probably going to at least seem fairly similar, but it seems like 2027, I think that's where the bright spot is going to come when some of these systems are in place. Things are moving in the right direction. Again, staff it sounds like they've been working extra hard, and you're right, doing all these extra projects, having to have an audit come in. Oh yeah, and make sure paychecks are ready to go for pay period. Super important. I would just make one request when this does come to the board, that the vice chair's question about the immaterial and material, maybe that brief explanation, because I think that again, this is a lot of technical stuff, and perhaps some of those definitions that may seem confusing to people who aren't financial experts is kind of spelled out. I think that would be it as far as my recommendations, and I don't think I have any other questions. But again, I would just reiterate that, as you move into the next audit period, that if there are resources, that you make them well known, because again, it's a super important part for me as part of the audit committee, and also as a board member, that the financial accounting, because people like to pick that apart, and this is super complex, and any way that we can make sure that we're getting things done on time adds a little bit of comfort to myself and hopefully to my colleagues. Were there any other follow-up questions? David, any other questions? No? All right. Well, thanks. I know this is just kind of a report. We sure appreciate it. And I look forward to this coming back to the board, because I know that they'll be having a lot of questions. And I think that through the conversations and questions or essay, hopefully that your presentation at the board meeting might reflect some of the conversations that we've had today. Francesca, do we have any continued non-agenda public comments?
No, we do not.
All right. Well, that concludes our meeting for today. Our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, June 5th at 1 p.m. Everybody have a great weekend.